Hello everyone. Today I'm going to be featuring the upcoming Soviet heavy tier 10 cruiser Petropavlovsk, a ship we have seen in the past but which was pulled, changed and is now being reintroduced. The changes were that, well, they changed the long-range dispersion, or the dispersion ellipse. By the looks of it, they made it poorer. They buffed the radar from 10 to 15 seconds. They reduced the AP angles from 55 to 50 degrees for the check for ricochets. And they reduced the detectability range. Not quite enough though, you can still stealth radar. The concealment is actually 11.7 with the full concealment build. Armor-wise, the ship always had very good armor. It has an icebreaker of 50 millimeters, but the nose is the upper part of the nose is 25, and the nose is actually quite sizable, so it can absolutely be punished. In fact, I consider this ship to be somewhat easier to punish than the Riga, for the simple reason that the nose is honestly fairly massive on the Petropavlovsk and the entire upper thing is 25. In fact, I've even gotten at range citadel through the nose. It happens rarely, but it can happen. The upper belt and the deck armor, however, is 50 millimeters, which of course makes you very resistant. And the icebreaker, well, the lower belt kind of extends all the way to the stern, so even when kiting away, the chances of being citadel through the stern are very low indeed. It does have a very tanky broadside, 180 millimeter armor, and more importantly, that armor is layered, which means that behind the 180 millimeter armor, there is another set, 120 underneath the turrets, 40 millimeter underneath the smokestacks. So if you get shot underneath the turrets, well, the ship needs to have more than 300 millimeters of pen to have any chance of actually citadeling you. So this ship is very resilient to damage, extremely resilient to damage. Speed-wise, when you have to cut away in situations like this, it is however pretty slow. With the speed flag you do 34.1 knots. This actually makes the Petropavlovsk one of the slowest tier 10 cruisers. I think Hindenburg is slower, I'm not sure which other ones actually fit the bill, but obviously you are much slower than they are. It also doesn't turn very well at the 990 meter turning circle with the 9.7 second rudder shift with the module. So dodging and trying to outrun when you're under fire can be very iffy. However, as mentioned earlier, you do have access to stealth radar, so when you do need to disengage, all you need to do is pop radar, and obviously if you're spotted it means that the DD is within your radar. So you can just radar, focus fire him and basically force him to disengage long enough for you to be able to disengage yourself. And with the captain like Kuznetsov, obviously your survivability is often straight through the roof. That doesn't mean that you aren't very vulnerable when giving broadside. In this case, I reversed to shoot a Wooster giving broadside across the map. Tried to accelerate in time, but as mentioned, this thing doesn't really stop that quickly and it doesn't change direction that quickly, so I glided far beyond where I expected and the thunder got to blap my broadside. And the citadel does extend a fair bit above the waterline, so obviously he had no issues of double citadeling me when I was giving that much broadside. What does make the Petropavlovsk somewhat amusing is how low the ship sits in the water. This was actually made painfully obvious by sailing past the Goliath that was in my division, and his first reaction was, oh my god, do you see how low that ship is in comparison to this one? And when you actually compare them, how small of a freeboard this thing has compared to the Goliath, it honestly looks like the Goliath's freeboard, aka the belt, is twice as high above the water. The comparison is absurd, and it just shows you how small of a target the broadside of this ship actually is, especially considering the armor protecting it. I did briefly mention that the ship is able to stealth radar. Now, whereas the ability to stealth radar obviously always is a huge advantage, on the Petropavlovsk it's good against DDs, but what it's truly devastating against is any sort of cruiser. 11.7 km concealment combined with 12 km radar. You can only get it to 18 seconds with the module, but it's more than enough to catch stealthy cruisers off guard, radar them, and blap them. And obviously this logically leads us to the next point regarding the Petropavlovsk, and that is the gun performance. The guns on the Petropavlovsk are absolutely amazing. Absolutely the main selling point of this ship. Not only is the shell velocity extremely good, 995 meters per second on both AP and HE. The range is 18.4, not that impressive, but obviously it's the AP that is the bread and butter of the ship. It has improved ricochet angles, 50 to 65 degrees. It has a short fuse, 0.022, aka 22 milliseconds, which is same as Stalingrad's. So improved fuse, incredible shell velocity, improved pen angles, and the threshold is only 37 millimeters, which is honestly pretty standard. That one doesn't stand out. But what you just saw there is exactly what stands out about this ship. The penetration values are once again very, very Soviet, to put it lightly. It doesn't quite reach the levels of Stalingrad penetration, but the best comparison to these 220mm guns would be Bismarck's 380mm battleship guns. That's the kind of penetration we're talking about. Of course, unlike Bismarck's guns, these things reload significantly faster, and they have that short fuse, lower threshold, and improved pen angles, which means that you can cause some absolutely incredible havoc with these monsters. And it also means that anyone giving you broadside will be feeling it, regardless of the situation. Because of this combination of concealment, armor, and honestly quite ridiculous guns, I've been kind of just testing the limits of this ship. Just pushing it into the most ridiculous situations. Obviously this ship excels whenever it gets to create crossfires. If the enemy team is occupied with your team and you ambush them from some flank and manage to create a crossfire, these guns are brutal, incredibly powerful, and obviously very, very satisfying to use, because it basically doesn't matter what ship you're pointing these guns at, you will still be creating absolute havoc among the enemy team. I will say that they have missed with the dispersion at long range. The dispersion is worse than it used to be, but I'm not quite convinced it's enough, because at close ranges, the damage this ship pulls off is, to put it lightly, pretty damn absurd. And ships that normally have some form of spaced armor, or some form of turtleback, or some form of basically anything, well, this ship doesn't really care. Improved pen angles means that slight angling isn't enough, slight turtleback isn't enough. You have to respect these guns just like you would respect Stalingrad guns. Obviously, the reload is longer, so if you're caught in nosing situations with the like of, for example, a Des Moines that I'm fighting, you will be losing out on the trade. However, because of the pen and those fantastic pen angles, I found myself finding it actually really easy to destroy both the Salem and the Des Moines turrets, because while they're trying to kill you, you're just breaking their guns, and that cripples them extremely heavily. Of course, at longer ranges, your dispersion will struggle a bit, but once again, I'm not quite sure that it's enough. The AP performance on this ship is truly a sight to behold, and add in the armor, the concealment, and of course, one can never forget Kuznetsov. Kuznetsov is such an incredible tool for any captain, for any ship, and especially a tanky ship, just like, well, Stalingrad, Kremlin, and now Petropavlovsk. They all shine when Kuznetsov is added. It makes ships that were already kind of borderline, it makes them really, really insane. Kuznetsov is by far the single most overpowered captain in the game, something that probably didn't need to be added, but obviously if you have it, it just makes Petropavlovsk even more ridiculous. At this point, finally, after the enemy team pummeling me, they will be able to take me down. But I don't even know how much damage and havoc I caused during that engagement. Another thing that should be highlighted is because smoke firing penalty is calculated based on, I think, ship caliber and concealment. So because the Petropavlovsk only has 220mm guns, but it also has great concealment, the smoke firing penalty is actually only 9.5 kilometers, which means that you can be shelling out basically battleship powered guns at 10 kilometers from your target, and they won't even be able to see you in the smoke. Obviously, this is quite brutal, especially when you combine it with radar, which means that if you shoot in your smoke and you get spotted, it tells you that, hey, a DD is 9.5 kilometers away, so you can just radar and either kill it yourself, or if you're playing with a team, let your team kill whatever enemy you caught. So, overall, I don't really understand why this ship is A, so stealthy, and B, able to stealth radar. I thought this was something we were moving away from, because I don't feel the ship really needs. In fact, the radar doesn't really feel that necessary, because the ship is already very, very powerful. In fact, fighting other cruisers is something that it really excels at. Perhaps not brawling, because big broadside and no torpedoes and so forth, but any sort of crossfire that you can create. This ship coming around a corner means that every single ship on the battlefield has to start angling against it, because if they don't, they're gonna get themselves killed extremely quickly. And because of course that short fuse AP means that even the likes of Smolensk, that normally enjoys giving broadside and getting away with nothing but the overpens, can be citadeled extremely consistently. And this applies to all of these super light cruisers. Overall though, the ship just feels very powerful. The combination of stealth and AP and armor and all of these things means that, well, your ability to punish any ships on the field is, well, kind of almost unrivaled, I would say. Even the long-range poorer dispersion doesn't feel like it's quite enough to keep this ship in check. Even ships that can't be citadeled, like for example Grosse Kurfürst because of the turtle bank, well, you just aim for the upper belt, and penetration plus short fuse AP plus improved pin angles means that, well, you don't have to worry about your damage against that target either. I should mention some other values as well, namely the AA on the ship is actually really good. I think it might be the only heavy cruiser that has 6.6 km AA range. I'm not sure if the Moskva still retained its 6.6 km radius, but regardless, the AA values on this ship is 6. Oh yeah, Moskva did have 6.6. Normally it's only light cruisers that get those kinds of values. But the Petropavlovsk does have 6.6 km AA, and the mid-range goes all the way to 4 kilometers, and overall the values are actually very strong. So if you do want to spec something like defensive AA, I mean, this ship would do well with those, but I do think Hydro is ultimately more valuable. Turret traverse is pretty damn anemic, that should be mentioned though. Turret traverse is 37.6 seconds, which means it is very slow indeed. However, what makes up for this slow turret traverse is the fact that this ship is actually capable of turning its turrets 360 degrees. Yes, all of the turrets, not just the back turret. The front turrets turn 360 degrees straight basically through the ship itself as well. So if you're reversing in, you can just switch sides basically on the fly while maintaining your angling on the target. Obviously incredibly powerful both when pushing in and when kiting away, because you don't have to wait for the turrets to make that full turn when you are switching sides to kite on. The ship does have some downsides. I mean, HE DPM isn't that impressive. You're not the greatest fire starter. Long range dispersion is somewhat squiddish. Oh yeah, oh by the way, here's a good example, another thing. Short fuse AP plus improved pin angles means that you can use AP against these as well. Especially the Kaba that has that 50mm plating tends to arm your AP quite easily, so sometimes you don't even need to switch. I'm a bit sad I didn't get the kill here. I should have gone for the radar to ensure it, but I did have lock on and thought I would get it. Bit sad about missing out on that kill. Still though, the TLDR of this ship, hard not to recommend it, really, in its current state. How can you not recommend this ship? Is it fun to play? Absolutely. It's ridiculously fun to play. Yes, you sometimes get blapped a bit to the nose. Yes, you sometimes get caught on a flank and broadsided, but honestly, anyone who's played Moskva knows the feeling of being rushed. The difference is this thing has much better stealth, and the AP is much scarier. Add in some really unique features like 360-degree turrets, and just some of the most monstrous AP you've probably ever seen in this game. Well, besides maybe Stalingrad, but this is with a fairly fast reloading guns as well. It's really hard not to think that this ship is just overtuned. Just really good at everything it does. Good AA, good armor, good concealment, insane guns. Not so good long range, but I mean, who cares about the long range when you're literally citadeling battleships left, right, and center. And of course, one of the I don't know if you even can call it. Well, the survivability isn't even a weakness, but even the weak survivability that perhaps could be lesser than something like Moskva's because of the lesser health pool. Then you got Kuznetsov to add into the mix, and even when you're supposed to die, Kuznetsov procs and keeps you alive for an absolutely absurd amount of time. The ship is amazing, but that's the TLDR. Incredibly fun to play. Being able to citadel any ship you fight is ridiculous. It's what was that? Did you guys see that citadel? Like, it doesn't even make any sense. Do I think this ship is overtuned? Yes. I hate the fact that Wargaming is going back to the whole stealth radar concept. This ship most certainly does not need stealth radar to perform. I don't know who came up with that idea, but absolutely not required. Overall, I'll let you guys draw your own conclusions. I hope you guys enjoyed this commentary, and thank you as always for your support, and I will talk to you guys later.